Japan history in 5 myths you still believe. Japan is one of the most admired and misunderstood countries on earth. A land where samurai once ruled, where emperors reigned for centuries, and where tradition and technology now stand side by side. But the Japan the world imagines is not always the Japan that existed. Today, we will travel across more than 2,000 years of history in only 30 minutes. Along the way, I will reveal 5 myth stories so widely believed that many people never question them. Some of them you may believe, too. So sit back, because this is not a simple lesson. This is a myth-busting journey through the real history of Japan. Ancient Japan and Myth 1. Japan was always isolated. Our journey begins in ancient Japan, long before samurai, long before castles, long before the word Japan even existed. In the earliest centuries, the islands were a mosaic of tribal groups, each with their own customs and beliefs. But contrary to popular belief, these early Japanese were not isolated from the outside world. From as early as the 1st century, Japan was in constant contact with the Asian continent. Ships sailed between the Korean peninsula and Kyushu. Immigrants, diplomats, craftsmen, and monks crossed the sea, bringing new technologies, new ideas, new religions. Ironworking, bronze casting, rice agriculture, all of these came from abroad. Writing arrived from China. Buddhism arrived from Korea. Even some early ruling families had roots that stretched beyond the islands. To imagine ancient Japan as a lonely, untouched world is to misunderstand the foundation of Japanese civilization. Japan was never a closed box, it was a sponge, absorbing and reshaping ideas from across Asia. This leads to the first myth we must break. Myth 1. Japan was always isolated. Japan was, in reality, deeply connected to the outside world. Its culture evolved precisely because of these connections. Isolation was the exception, not the rule. Samurai era and Myth 2. Samurai were perfect warriors. As we step into medieval Japan, a new figure rises from the chaos of warfare: the samurai. Today, the world sees samurai as flawless warriors, masters of the sword, noble in spirit, disciplined in body and mind. A symbol of perfection, but the reality was far more human. For much of Japanese history, samurai did not fight with swords. They were mounted archers, elite horsemen trained to strike from a distance. The sword was a sidearm, important, yes, but not the core of their combat style. And even the legendary katana, so often portrayed as the perfect weapon, was not always the strongest sword on the battlefield. It was valued as a status symbol, a piece of spiritual identity, but its power was often exaggerated in modern portrayals. Samurai battles were chaotic, messy, and brutal. They involved ambushes, night attacks, siege warfare, and political deception. Samurai could be brave, but they could also be reckless, frightened, or opportunistic. In short, they were human beings, not heroic archetypes. The idealized samurai you see in films and games is a creation shaped by later generations, not a reflection of medieval reality. And so we must break the second myth. Myth 2. Samurai were perfect warriors. Samurai were skilled, yes. But they were not flawless. They were shaped by politics, fear, survival, ambition, and personal struggle. They were warriors. But they were also human. Edo Japan and Myth 3. Japan was entirely closed during Sakoku. The samurai age eventually gave way to a new era, Edo Japan, a period of peace, stability, and strict social order. And with this era came one of the most persistent global misunderstandings: the belief that Japan was completely sealed off from the world. A closed fortress, a nation in total isolation. But the truth is far more complex. During the so-called Sakoku period, Japan did restrict travel and limit foreign influence, yet it never fully severed its international connections. Japan actively traded with China, Korea, the Ryukyu Kingdom, the Ainu in the north, the Dutch, through Nagasaki's Dejima. Foreign books were imported. Medical knowledge from Europe, especially anatomy and astronomy, entered Japan. Diplomatic missions continued with Korea and Ryukyu, and Japanese goods flowed across Asia. Japan was selective, not isolated. The Tokugawa government monitored ideas, controlled information, and shaped cultural flow with precision, but the doors were never fully shut. Thus we arrive at the third myth. Myth 3. Japan was completely closed during Sakoku. The truth: Japan was controlled. Not isolated, it remained an active, connected player in the regional network of East Asia. Modern Japan and Myth 4. Japan modernized overnight after 1868. In 1868, Japan underwent one of the most dramatic transformations in world history: the Meiji Restoration. And from this moment, a global myth was born, the belief that Japan modernized almost instantly. As if samurai simply put down their swords one day and woke up the next morning as businessmen in suits. The truth is far more complicated. Japan's modernization was a turbulent, painful, and uneven process. Roads were not paved overnight. Factories did not appear out of thin air. Education, industry, and military reforms required enormous effort, and resistance to change was widespread. Former samurai struggled to find new identities. Peasants faced heavy taxation. Local rebellions erupted. The government itself was still learning how to govern a modern nation-state. Japan hired foreign experts, sent students abroad, imported technology, translated textbooks, built railways, trained new armies, and debated every step of the way. Modernization was not magic. It was a century-long process built on experimentation, conflict, compromise, and failure. Which brings us to the fourth myth. Myth 4. Japan modernized overnight. After 1868, Japan did not modernize instantly. It modernized intentionally through struggle, debate, and relentless effort. Contemporary Japan and Myth 5. Japan has always been a homogeneous society. Modern Japan is often described abroad as one of the most homogeneous nations in the world. A country where everyone supposedly shares the same culture, background, and identity. This is the fifth and final myth, one that shapes global perceptions more than any other. The truth is, Japan has never been as homogeneous as the myth suggests. For over 1,000 years, Japan was shaped by the movement of people. Merchants from the Silk Road, Korean and Chinese immigrants, Ryukyuan sailors, Ainu communities in the north, hidden Christians in the south, and later, residents of mixed descent in port cities. Japan has always been connected by trade, diplomacy, migration, and cultural exchange. Even in the Sakoku period, Nagasaki remained a global crossroads. Yet the idea of homogeneity grew stronger in the late 19th and 20th centuries, when the government promoted a unified national identity to support rapid modernization and national cohesion. This identity was powerful, but it was also carefully constructed. Today, Japan is again becoming more diverse. Foreign residents, returnees, multilingual communities, and young generations with mixed heritage. Which brings us to the fifth myth. Myth 5. Japan has always been a homogeneous society. Japan's identity was not born from sameness, but from the constant blending of ideas, people, and cultures. 5 myths you still believe. 1. Japan was always isolated. 2. Samurai were perfect warriors. 3. Japan was entirely closed during Sakoku. 4. Japan modernized overnight after 1868. 5. Japan has always been a homogeneous society. Thank you for watching. Japan's history still hides countless secrets, and we're just getting started. If you want to uncover more mysteries of samurai, ninja, and ancient Japan, subscribe and join us on this journey through time.